Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Minh, and I'm your co-host with Heather. And you are listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Heather, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Minh. Today we have the company of Minh, who's already introduced himself, Debbie, Matt, Dhanika, and myself. And we're here to talk about something we perceive to be a huge opportunity for the NDIS market, which was an announcement on the 16th of June that the NDIA, the National Disability Insurance Agency, released the 2022-2023 annual pricing review.
No, it's 22-23 pricing review, which is the period that the review was undertaken, but it's the 5-year review of the SDA pricing.
So our purpose today is to break down what we perceive as opportunities, implications. Are there any negative things to move forward from here? And hoping that you'll find this discussion interesting. So I'll throw it over initially to Debbie to give us her initial gut reactions to what she thought when she read the report.
And by the way, I just want to jump in here. We're going to do about 3 or 4 podcasts this week on this very topic. So this is simply a first impressions review of the announcement on Friday.
First impressions, wow. Overall, the first thing that we saw was that the average SDA funding price increases across the board is 18.5%.
As an average.
As an average, yeah. So this is huge. However, it has in some ways complicated the SDA funding quite hugely. The NDIA price review panel obviously have taken about 6-7 months to go through submissions from different organisations and companies and individuals, looking at many, many different aspects, how the original prices were put together and where that basically had steered the industry wrong in terms of what was being built because of the pricing that was offered for certain types of builds. And I think in most cases, they have really addressed this in this new review, significantly increased the prices for things like improved livability and fully accessible 2-bedroom tenant, 2-tenant, 3-bedroom houses, and also decreased, which I wasn't expecting would happen at all, the incomes on some of the units, the high physical support, particularly the 2-bedroom, 1-tenant units. So overall, it is hugely different, the figures that we're looking at now.
Debbie, did you have any indication before the report was released about what you thought the average price increase might be?
Look, we were hearing, maybe 15%, maybe 30%. I was speaking to Alicia Rathbone from the Summer Foundation Housing Hub a couple of weeks back now when we were down in Melbourne at the SDA conference. And she said that she'd just been chatting to the NDIA board. They'd asked for some quotes from the Summer Foundation and they'd said to her, don't get too excited. So I'd kind of thought, okay, we're not going to see anything massive here. I've been absolutely stunned.
Can I throw my two cents worth here? As Debbie said, the word on the street was, 15-ish% increase, right? Maybe HPS is being only 10% because they want to, for housing, because they don't want to get too many people excited about HPS funding. 15 to 20% for the ILs and robust because they're lacking in product in the marketplace. And what's come out is, if you look at the chart there, the red and green chart there, I think, how wrong were we? IL, 160%, not 15%. Yeah. My God.
I'm absolutely stunned. So the highest rise has been on for IL housing for 2-tenant houses. And yeah, it's 159.6%. We're talking 160% increase in the base SDA funding amount. That is massive. It's just beyond comprehension, actually.
So, Matthew, can I ask you a question, Matt? I'm sorry, still have this under.
Steal away.
In the past, investors have been calling our office and talking to you, and you being an investor relations manager, handling their inquiries. I know the answer to this question, but the question is, Matt, what has been the trend in discussions you've had with investors, newbie investors, about what they should aim for, what they should invest, what do they want, and so forth? What has been the discussions between you and investors thus far the last 2 years?
I mean, in terms of types, like it was 100% HBS before. I think I had actually an inquiry the other week, one guy who just wanted to build IL, but that's so rare. I feel like, for the most part, everyone builds HBS. There are some people who want to go the robust route, but 80% of people would want to build HBS, maybe 10 to 15% want to build robust, and it would be 5% or less that's going IL or FA. So this is going to be such a game changer, both in terms of the perception of people in terms of what builds, what designs they're going to go for, and also in terms of just how it's perceived in the market, I suppose.
Yeah, but you want to go back to the background here?
Sure. Thank you, Minh. So there are 3 points that I see that have come out of this review that are positive. Well, first of all, back in 2016, the NDIA promised that the SDA pricing framework would provide better than market returns to investors. And to this point, that hasn't been achievable. Also, this is a huge positive step to significantly increase SDA prices because we're in a time of unprecedented increase in input costs. Currently, it's not viable to deliver SDA in some styles and design categories in many locations across Australia. So these are just 3 points that we would like to reflect amongst ourselves this morning, look at any negative impacts, look at any positive impacts, and of course, where there's change, there's always opportunity.
So this is a 5-year review. Does that mean that we're going to have a review every 5 years, Debbie?
I believe yes.
Yeah. And this does fix a lot of the problems, isn't it?
I feel like the biggest one that it fixes is, you look at the number of participants and IL far outweighs every other category, but previously it just wasn't, in terms of the way the pricing structure was set up, it just wasn't catered towards that, which didn't really make sense, both from an investor standpoint and towards the ultimate goals of the NDIS. So this goes in that direction. Yeah.
Agreed. Debbie, when you first saw this report on Friday night, in your mind, what were the flaws of the existing framework from 5 years ago? Let's talk about that.
I guess the most obvious flaw was the pricing for tenants living in apartments with high physical support funding. So people were building high physical support units based on the fact that they could potentially get about $130,000 per participant, which was a huge yield. The problem is the number of participants with high physical support funding funded to live in a 2-bedroom, 1-tenant unit, very, very small. So people were building these and they were not going to get the tenants with the highest level of funding. So therefore their yields would be lower, but they were still building them. And not just that, also the 1-bedroom is also a high level of funding, the 1-bedroom, 1-tenant unit funding. So there's been a lot of units being developed that are sitting empty or with lower funded participants in them. And what wasn't being built, as Matt has said, was improved livability homes because there was just no money in it.
In amongst all this positivity, Debbie, do you think anyone has missed out?
Robust. I don't see, there are some changes and there's certainly some price increases. I'm looking at the 2-tenant houses for robust has gone up 86%. Across the board for robust, it's probably down around the 20% mark, just scanning these figures. But I think a lot of people were talking about hoping that there would be a new price level for single tenant houses for robust participants, knowing that 80% of robust SDA funded participants can't share with another person. We're not seeing that. The only funding for a single tenant for the robust level is in villas, 1-bedroom or 1-resident villas. That's gone up about 15 to 22%. But to me, that still doesn't really encourage people to build robust. That's maybe going to be a break even.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, because I mean, we were talking about this for months before this, hoping that we'd kind of see more of a positive outcome in terms of, because everyone builds robust. Well, when they do rebuild robust, it's because they know that they'll find participants, and then they know that there's a demand there. But a lot of people, they don't know about that situation where it's 80% need to live on their own. And I don't feel as if this is necessarily being addressed here as much as it could be. Yeah.
What's going to happen, I think, is all those existing robust houses that have been built around Australia, the landlord's going to say, well, I might get 80 grand rent. Okay, this is a round number. I'm not quoting actual numbers, yeah, just examples. I might get 80 grand for one tenant for robust in my 4-bedroom house. Or I could seek 2 IL tenants at 160 grand rent. Or I'll get 3 IL tenants in the robust house for 180 grand rent. So no thank you to robust participants and give me the IL participants. That is going to be the mindset of people going forwards.
And I feel like the flow and effect of that is going to be that there's going to be even more demand for robust houses for people because everyone will be shifting to an IL or catering to IL, which I don't know what the long-term effects of that is going to be.
Okay, and I'll put my devil's advocate hat on. That is, these builders are going to they do charge a lot for the robust houses, right? And if I'm an investor, I'm thinking, well, why should I spend X amount of dollars on a robust house for IL participants when I can build a normal house with the very small upgrades for compliance for IL and have 100 grand cheaper to get the 3 tenants for IL? Because investors want, you know, they were saying, Heather, as a consumer, you want to pay the least amount of money possible for the maximum quality product possible for the greatest outcome. That's just human behavior. So when you're buying a property here and property investment, you want to spend as least as possible with the biggest return, with the least risk. And that means building an IL house to get the maximum return and removing the risk of damage, which is the robust housing. So I'm just, I'm throwing it out there. We'll see a trend here moving forwards, which is what the government wanted. At the end of the day here, it's what the government wanted. The theme here is, if you can read the whole document, and this is, if everyone Googles the SDA Price Review 2022-23, it is about fire sprinklers, improved livability, and 2 tenant houses. That's what the theme is all about, Heather.
Thank you, Minh, for that excellent analysis. So we've heard from Debbie and we've heard from Matt and Minh. The one person we haven't heard from is our resident architectural design expert, Dhanika. And no pressure, Dhanika, just going to throw you under the bus now. Any just gut reactions this morning, having had a chance to review?
Oh, honestly, I've only been able to look at it this morning, but the numbers are fantastic in terms of the improved livability. But yeah, everything you've said makes absolute sense. I do like the idea that a lot of people they've built the high physical support houses so far, but it means that they're going to be able to fit those improved livability tenants into there along with the high physical support tenants. And so it'll maximize their income that way as well, which is amazing for investors in that sense. So yeah.
That's a great point. There's so much to unpack here. So I'll hand it back to everyone to have another look at anything that really that jumps out at you as an opportunity.
I want to ask Dhanika, is there much stuff in the document about NCC?
Yeah, no, there's a little bit actually. So in a recent podcast, we actually talked about the National Construction Code building classifications and how SDA housing fits into those categories. So, well, just as a refresher, the NCC is Australia's primary set of technical design and construction provisions, and it sets the minimum requirements for safety, health, amenity, accessibility, and sustainability for any given building, dependent on the classifications. And so we pretty much laid out that the SDA housing can fit classes 1A and B, 2 and 3, despite class 3 being the only one to mention disability support in any way. But now, so with this review, the NDIA and the Department of Social Services, they've put forward a motion to work with the Australian Building Codes Board and other government boards and industry stakeholders to define more clearly, define this more clearly, which is great because, well, there'll no longer be any confusion around it. So specifically, they've asked that they provide greater clarity to the sector as to whether the National Construction Code prevents SDA dwellings from being classified as Class 1 buildings, and that they develop a long-term approach to the classification of SDA dwellings in the NCC that protects the human rights of people with disability to housing choice, appropriately protects SDA resident participants against fire risks, and provides for a more ordinary home-like environment than that required under Class 3 in the NCC.
Thank you, Dhanika. And also, we're very fortunate to have so many subject matter experts here in this company. So thank you very much for that detailed input.
Not a problem.
Matt, any final thoughts, feelings? Concerns?
I think Dhanika kind of touched on it very briefly earlier. He kind of mentioned that although, I mean, if you're kind of in, maybe you already have a HBS property and you're looking at the pricing changes for higher physical sport and you're thinking, damn, that's maybe not that great for me. I mean, the good thing is that because there is that huge boost to improve livability, you will see a tenancy mix, which is, I suppose, less bottom-ended, or more of a consistent tenancy mix, I suppose. Which, from an investment standpoint, it gives more confidence to the market, I suppose. Yeah.
Another excellent point. Debbie, anything you would like to implications moving forward?
I guess implications moving forward are complications over the pricing structure that has now been put forward.
Debbie, can you please explain that? Those little things.
Yeah. So in the past, we had one pricing chart and there was slight variations for if you had a fire sprinkler or if you had an OOA in the property. Now what they've done is they've also added another major component into the mix, which is whether or not the owner of the dwelling paid GST on purchase price or claimed a tax input credit. And basically now what we've got are 4 different charts. They've also increased the allowance for sprinklers significantly.
The word sprinkler is the first word.
Yeah.
So it's very clear.
How important it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So now we have 4 charts where we've got no sprinklers and GST paid and GST inputs claimed. With sprinklers, GST paid, GST claimed. No sprinklers, GST not paid and GST input tax credits not claimed. And with sprinklers, GST not paid or GST tax input credits claimed. We've still got the situation where OOA also does have an effect on the price, as well as, of course, the location factors. And we haven't even touched on the location factors in this report. Those have in some instances changed quite significantly. I haven't kind of done a full comparison as yet.
We'll cover that in our next episode.
Yeah, that's definitely another episode. So, when I looked at this, I just went, whoa, this is a far more complex base model now. I'm assuming that when the actual calculator comes out, it's going to be also much more complex, but will make it much easier for us to actually figure out what is relevant and what's not. That's what jumped out at me.
Can I be rude and say 4 words to all the naysayers out there? I told you so. Look at our last year and a half of podcasts, and there's a theme in our podcast.
Would that be fire sprinklers, man?
Yes. I keep on harping on like fire sprinklers. 1, fire sprinklers. We keep on talking about 2-tenant housing, haven't we?
I've been saying to clients all the time, you can go with a 4-bedroom, but expect 2 participants. Don't expect 3.
And lastly, we've been beating the IL drum for a year and a half. We saw it a year and a half ago, but no, I want to say it again. And I'm being a smart ass here. All those naysayers who said, no, I'm going for HPS. I'm going for 4-bedroom. I'm going for, well, guess who the winners are now, everybody? Those who went to IL first. They're the winners. And do you know why, Matt? Because they bought those ILs at $650,000 2 years ago.
Guaranteed they'll be
$650,000 to $680,000 purchase price for 4-bedder IL around Australia as an average. And now those builds are finishing up now, roughly now, from a year and a half ago to now. It's almost being built now, finished, enrolled now. So they'll be enrolled as of June, July 2023 onwards, and they're going to collect those $180,000, $170,000 rents for 2 ILs if they were fire sprinklers, right? on a 650 grand purchase price.
That is an enormous yield.
I mean, I don't know what's the yield there. 180, 170 divided by 650, because 200 divided by 800
25%?
200 divided by 800 is 20%, I think, 25%. So this is 170 on 650. That's got to be 22, 23, 24% return. So those who saw the writing on the wall 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, who are coming out to their builds now and they were slightly concerned, they would be laughing right now because they got the call right. And all you have to do, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, go back to our 140 episodes. Look at that title of our episodes. We're talking about being conservative, being wary about the oversupply of HPSs. Don't do, what's the old saying about the herd mentality, Heather? What's the old saying there? The herd over the cliff thing? Don't follow the herd?
I only know about the Pied Piper Hamlin story.
Yeah.
Not sure about the herd over the cliff story. But yeah, that's right. Don't follow that Pied Piper over the cliff, because otherwise you'll be following but not leading.
But I would like to say, just to reiterate again what's been said, that this is, okay, you might have built a high physical support 4-tenant home that cost you $1 million. The thing is, now you will still be able to get full tenancy with a different tenant mix that is still going to give you a really good income. So overall, this is a massive win for everybody.
Matthew, in the last 2 years, when talking to people, what kind of tenancy and mix are you telling them to expect from a 4-bedroom HBS house?
Generally, I generally say 60-70% of the potential income of the property. So,
but the mix of tenants, though.
I would probably, from that, I'd probably assume FAs. 2 FAs is probably a realistic, I suppose.
Realistic, but most likely outcome would have been what?
Could be ILs. Depending on the location, obviously.
For a 4-bedroom house, assume 1 empty room, 1 for the OOA, and 2 left. Of the 2, it's an IL and FA, or a HBS and a IL, or 2 ILs. So now, if they were the outcomes, IL, or FA-IL.
It's a lot more consistent in terms of the expectations, the potential.
Yes. It's going to be roughly that 160 to 190 grand return gross rent now, which is double from
more than double
a year ago. Because a year ago, if you said, oh, if I got an FA and an IL, what was the return on that, Matt?
Would have been, I guess, 80K.
85 to 90,
90K, something like that. Yeah.
And now it's double that.
Yeah, it's huge.
I guess this just shows that the NDIA really have seen that they need SDA development, much more SDA development, and they've realised that this is the only way that that's going to happen, by encouraging private investment, which was what it was set up for in the beginning. And they've really done a realistic job of looking at all the different elements and putting in those pricing levels to make sure that this is sustainable going forward for the next 5 years.
I think we should finalise and wrap up this episode before we go to our next episode soon. And your thoughts, Heather? I mean, you looked at the report. You've heard what we said today. Are you happy with the outcome here?
I think that the NDIA is maturing, and I think that's the exciting thing about this report, is that they understand that it's more complex and the different price categories. We're moving into a different world, and with change, there is always opportunity. There are people that will miss out, and there is a lot to unpack. So please watch this space. This week we'll be breaking down the categories, and when we've had more time to reflect and analyse what's contained in the report, then we will be organising to send some podcasts your way as soon as possible.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minh. Again, we have in the room, we're very fortunate to have subject matter experts. We have Debbie, we have Dhanika, and we have Matt to further break down this exciting opportunity as a result of the SDA price review that was released on the 16th of June, 2023. And we will be here to share with you things that we have analysed over the past few days. So we would hand it over to Debbie, who is our guiding light when it comes to all things NDIS.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.